Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by the Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids and Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from River City's media, and specifically Jesse, who are here digitally recording our session for later air on River City's Community Access Television. And it's time for our monthly visit with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. Good morning, Lance.
Hey, thanks for having me, Carl. Appreciate it. And every time I hear that music, I know we really do have to get to work.
That's it. That's my thing.
Scares me on the other days, too.
When you hear that, you go, should I be there? No, it's okay. I'm not. Well, it's getting to be that busy time of the year as spring is here. The parks are going to be opening. And I guess what we can start with is forest fire danger and fire danger. State's starting to see some fires around the state as we dry out from the winter, and we've been seeing some fires in Wood County as well.
It is Wildfire Prevention at least week, if not month. So I want people to be aware of that out there. I know my wife is involved with the Firewise program in our neighborhood and in Grand Rapids, so it often comes to the forefront in my own house talking about it, but I know through some meetings she's had with the DNR, Amy Lupke specifically over there, that it's at the forefront. And we are in a very high-risk area, especially in southern Wood County because of the pine plantations. And everybody out there has to be extremely careful this time of year. We had a fire last weekend where we burned about pretty close to 40 acres up in the Pittsville area. Those get away from you really quick. It was somebody just burning a little bit of trash. You know, some of those embers got away. That grass is still dry. It has not greened up. Luckily, that one did not get into the canopy. But, be extremely careful because it stretches our resources tremendously. Not just ours, but the DNR, the local fire departments, emergency responders, and everybody else involved. So one of those, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Well, now's the time to do, before you do any burning, to do some raking and cleaning up of lawn debris and stuff to try and make it less likely that you'll have a brush fire.
And they would certainly like to see you. That's absolutely true. To help facilitate that green up. The other part of that is they'd rather see you not burn anything.
Right.
To take it to those disposal areas that we have in the area. But there are some things that absolutely need to be burnt. But you need to have a burning permit.
Good point.
And you need to follow those rules and regulations. It amazes me sometimes when I drive around and I see somebody. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a 15 to 20 mile an hour wind out there, and they're burning. And I know, they don't have a permit, I know they don't know the rules, and they're probably not aware of the dangers and the costs that can personally be associated with that should it get away. So, a real heads up on that because that does really stretch our resources in the area. Our resources, and it damages your personal property.
You make a good point because if you cause a brush fire and you're in violation of the law, you're going to be fined, might be jailed, plus then you're going to have all the ensuing costs and maybe lawsuits against you if you cause damage to other people's property. It can get real costly.
It can get real costly. Your insurance company's not going to be very happy with you should that occur.
No, that's right. So, but people are wondering then too, when the parks, when does the park season begin in Wood County?
Well, things are kind of starting to roll already. This has been a strange year, obviously. We had snow from mid-November, right until really last week, I guess. We still had another pretty good storm roll through here. So, we're behind on some of those things that we would normally get behind on. But we had a great snowmobile season this year. Those of you might hate 20 below, but from a winter sports perspective, it was a long season. And that also relates well to Powers Bluff and the winter sports activities we have up there. But all of our parks are opening right now. You've got opportunities out at, South Park, Lake Wazeecha, Lake Nepco, North Park, out at Dexterville. We have tremendous facilities in this county, better than most counties have. And I urge our local residents to use those. We have we have probably better than a 50-50 mix on even who uses the campgrounds. We have a lot of local participation. But take the opportunity to get out and use those. Other than the boat launch fee, they're free to use. Get out there and take advantage of those. I think you're going to find that we have some real jewels out there just waiting for your use.
You mentioned campgrounds. They fill up pretty quick. The reservations, I'm sure they've been taking reservations already, and I would almost bet that some of the campgrounds are already filled for the Memorial Day weekend and the like.
Yeah, those holiday weekends, fill up really fast. We always leave a couple of sites, open for kind of self-registration the day of, so to speak. But with our online reservation system, with those call-ins and the ability to register, about a year ahead of time for some of the facilities we have, the Memorial Days, the Labor Days, the State Water Ski Show tournament weekends, and then there's a number of festivals and opportunities that happen along the way in town. It might be soccer tournaments, softball tournaments. Our parks are also heavily utilized there. A lot of those families that travel week in, week out tend to camp during those because it becomes very costly if you stay in a hotel every weekend. There are still opportunities out there though, and then there's always opportunity during those weeks. And if you want a little bit more laid back camping opportunity, those especially Tuesday through Thursday, maybe a little bit more peace and quiet and the opportunity to get out there.
Okay, yeah, but it's beautiful. I know I like to take walks with our dog around Lake Wazicha, and that's such a pretty area.
We have people that, it amazes me, very local to those parks. I mean, within a mile of the park, who actually take their unit out, their camping unit out there, their trailer, their pop-up, their tent.
Well, you feel like you're miles away from anything.
They camp, and then they actually go home, like to take a shower and clean up, and then they come back and camp, and they'll stay out there all week. And there's a number of them who do that. There's a lot of camaraderie that happens in those camps, too. It's a chance to get away with your neighbors, have that, that campfire and talk. Sometimes those opportunities that you don't even have in your own subdivision. So we want to see you out there.
That's it. That's it. And be responsible stewards of it. Don't litter. If you got a dog, make sure to clean up after after your dog, and etc. If you're having a barbecue, be responsible.
Yep. Take out what you brought in. Pick up what you see.
Exactly.
That old motto. And the other thing too, we do allow pets in those parks, but we do have leash laws in those parks too, and that's something that people should be cognizant of. We've had over the past number of years, some bites, and some of those instances where those people have been cited, but there is a leash law. Those pets need to be on a leash when you're walking around those lakes, on those trails, or through the parks.
Yeah, remember that. And that includes the city here in Wisconsin Rapids. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. We're visiting with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. You mentioned the winter. Any estimate or of how much additional revenue maybe was brought in by the fact that we had a good snowmobile and winter sports season for Wood County?
I haven't seen those revenue numbers on a regional basis from the Department of Tourism yet, but they're starting to roll in. The ones I was seeing were from even late fall, very early winter, and those were pretty promising. So I think we're going to see a pretty good uptick in that. My concern though is always as you ebb and flow, it probably is going to impact the spring fishing season a little bit. I'm not sure the ice will be off of all those lakes. I know the ice will be off all those lakes up north for the opener coming up. The river's clear here. Wazicha and Nepco opened up, a few days ago. But it's going to impact that a little bit in that respect. But I think we had a real good winter. I anticipate a good summer based on some of the pre-registrations that we have locally. Tourism is so important to our area. We have tremendous recreational opportunities. Tourism brings a lot of dollars into our area without the need to build out a lot of infrastructure. Those people typically, they don't use our schools. They don't use some of the communication infrastructure we have. They don't tax those resources, yet they bring a lot of revenue into our area. So every single person out there, I know through different organizations, we have welcome committees and ambassadors and other people that go out to greet the public. But one of the things we hear is that this is a friendly area to travel to. And every one of the 75,000 plus residents in our county are ambassadors for our area.
Point.
So, I ask those people, reach out. If you see somebody who looks lost, help them.
That's it. Exactly.
If you get a reputation as being a fun place to travel to and somewhere where the locals are friendly, you end up with a lot more tourism, and those at the end of the day translate well into our improved economic condition.
That's it. That dollar turns over big time and helps pay for a lot of local jobs. A lot of local people who work at restaurants or stores or what have you. They appreciate those extra dollars coming in. Space needs. You just had a public session where folks could weigh in on the future space needs of Wood County. What kind of input did you get?
We did not have a lot of input at that meeting. We sent out personal invitations to those who surrounded those areas, somewhat immediately. It's certainly noticed in the papers. I think what I really want to make clear is when you hear a price tag number of 50, 60, 70 million dollars for a project, those really are realistic numbers. But as a board, we always look at, what is the return on investment? Are those dollars worth spending? Do we need to do that? And part of the Space Needs Implementation Committee's task was not only to decide what we need today to address those immediate concerns, and we do have a lot of those with infrastructure. We have a 60-plus-year-old courthouse that has, in some respects, ancient HVAC systems, plumbing, infrastructure. That went in 60-plus years ago. And some of that stuff, we have made it limp along, but it has a useful life, and some of that's starting to fail. So there will be some immediate needs that need to be addressed. There will be some immediate security needs that will need to be addressed. But then when we talk about construction of other buildings, we're not just looking at this year or next year. Those are the pretty easy things to determine. So what are we going to need 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? We don't want to box ourselves into a corner, and we don't want to be in a situation where if for some reason Wapaka County was unwilling or couldn't lease us jail space or anywhere else, and we needed to have a facility, we would A, know where it's going to go, B, know somewhat what it's going to look like, and obviously as things go into the future, design changes a little bit, but we need to have those things ready to go. The worst thing that can happen is you say, 20 years from now, that's a long time away. Well, I'll tell you, when I came to the board, it's pushing 20 years ago. and I can't say that I always had that 20, 30, 40-year perspective. I've made this comment often. I use it in many of the presentations that I make to other groups, but it's a line I stole from somewhere else, but it says, our time upon the stage of action is but brief, but yet in the drama each must play a part. And what it means is we're not here very long.
Right.
Our life on this earth is, is a blink of an eye. Time just flies by. And the one thing that you hope is that with future generations, you have laid the groundwork for an improved community and maybe an improved society. I think everybody who decides to serve the public in any way, whether it be as an employee of a city or a county, whether it be as an elected official, has that goal in mind. We all have different thoughts as to how we get there. And that's where the argument usually comes in, and those debates. But I think if you interviewed every one of those, they'd say, I want to make my community a better place. The one thing that I don't want to do is 20 years from now have somebody say, those people back in 2000, past or 2010 or 2020, weren't thinking at all. They laid no groundwork, they laid no plans, they had no idea where they were going to go. So, we're trying to create a roadmap as to what would be the best way to do that. My personal feeling is I don't think that you've heard numbers as high as 60 million.
Mm-hmm.
I get one vote, and I'm only one vote. I highly doubt, though, that you're going to see the county board, who has been tremendously reluctant to borrow any money. And I'll give you an example. We have about $2 million of debt. We have a borrowing capacity of over $250 million. We really don't borrow any money. Occasionally some state trust fund dollars if we need to put up some emergency communication towers because those are mandated or because they changed the bandwidth. But we have been reluctant to just go borrow money. So as we go forward, we look at those 20, 30 years, some of that would be through capital improvement. Some of it might be through bonding. But I feel fairly sure in saying that I don't think you're going to see the county run out and borrow $50 or $60 million to create an all-new facility tomorrow.
How might, now there's a lot of construction going on by the courthouse right now, and I know you've been in contact with Mayor Verwink, they've weighed in on from the city's perspective. How might that area be changed in the future? If you need a bigger courthouse, are we looking at a new campus site, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, well, what those plans entailed as we were looking at the future was build out of jail size, from our capacity of about 127 to a capacity of maybe up to 300 someday, someplace. Additional room for the social service employees. We have those scattered throughout the area in many different locations. And just having them next to each other, lends to a lot more efficient operation. Sure. We've been told that we would probably be at the top of the list of counties that would receive an additional judge. which would also mean build out of a district attorney's office and some additional staff there as we deal with some of the issues, especially drug-related, that are really creeping back into our area through the use of heroin and some, methamphetamine, some of those other things. We're a fairly high-use area, believe it or not, based on population. That's something that's going to need to be addressed. But as that conversation continues, whether we're doing a project in Marshfield or whether we're doing it here in Rapids, we do sit down with the city planners and say, how do these proposals fit with your long-term goals? And we had a couple options with the city, and in sitting down with them, I think if we did something, I think their initial thoughts, and keep in mind when I say this, these are conversations.
Right.
Just like the listening session. Those are conversations. Come on in and tell us what you think. I think the thoughts right now is something done downtown helps keep vitality in that area, or in some cases revitalize a downtown area. We've had numbers that show projections as high as 750 bodies a day in and out of that courthouse. And those translate to people in restaurants, into the attorneys that use our courthouse, the courtrooms and the others, in their offices downtown. I think if you ask the city leaders, and they had their way, they'd say, we'd love to keep those people in a downtown area. It creates the ability to have restaurants, coffee shops, dry cleaners, all of the ancillary businesses that go along with that. So those conversations are always going on. And how do they revitalize that downtown area? And then if we can bring together a public-private partnership, or if we can do something with the city and co-locate facilities, whether those be city, county, those types of buildings, that would be great. That saves the taxpayers money. And at the end of the day, when I look at an issue, I say, if I was using my dollars, my money, the stuff that I have saved, is this how I would spend it because it's the best return on investment? That's not always the cheapest option up front because you have to factor in operational costs, but it's always the one that at the end of the day will be the most effective.
And that's the thing, like you mentioned with the infrastructure of the courthouse itself, how old it is. I mean, that ends up costing you money with inefficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. And so eventually it pays to upgrade, but there's going to be that initial cost to pay for that upgrade.
Carl, the things that we look at, let's talk back 50, 60 years ago when they put that building up, 60 plus years ago. There was no thought of computers. There was no thought of fiber. There was no thought of Wi-Fi, and how it penetrates buildings and how it works. There was no thought of any of those things. I think they thought when they put down, cast iron plumbing and ran those sewers and water mains, that there would never be an issue. As we have found as technology advances and there's advances in use of materials, things get better. And things tend to last longer. Those things that we put in place and never would have planned for way back become a detriment. It's almost impossible to control the HVAC systems that we have in the courthouse with the current configuration. We have some offices that are 85 degrees and some that are 55 degrees on the same day. You have jails that have gone from linear construction into pod construction because people have found that the cost of the employee, the personnel costs, far exceed the cost, in some cases, of the structure itself. And if you can reduce those costs, it lends well to new construction. All that being said, 20 years from now, I'm going to guess that people are going to look back at what we're doing, with your smartphone or with your iPad.
That's going to be old-fashioned technology, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the Google Glass, or,
right.
or you're going to be using your watch or some other facility, or you don't need anything and you just talk to the air. Who knows? But we want to start preparing for those days and figure out how we're going to best handle that.
I would be remiss if I didn't remind, and I'm sure the folks at Wood County Emergency Management would want me to remind everybody that this Thursday, speaking of technology and tests, we are going to be having our annual Tornado Week tornado drill, starting at 1 with the actual watch being issued statewide, and then 1:45. You'll hear us taken off the air by the emergency alert system, and the sirens will be sounding all over Wood County.
It amazes me when I have people tell me, the siren went off and there wasn't a tornado near my house. Now, when we sit in that emergency operations center or down that dispatch center, or those people are out there spotting, I guess my question for those people is, how close would you like it to be before we sound the siren? I personally would rather have 6 false alarms than have them miss one the other direction. So, it's important that we go out and test the system. Make sure the sirens are actually physically working. Make sure that we're able to activate those from the dispatch center. Make sure that those zones work properly. And then make sure that those people who hear those know where to tune in, what to do, and to get to a safe place. I have actually had people tell me that siren went off and that tornado was 4 miles away. And I'm thinking,
that's pretty close.
I don't know about you, and I might not have run in the basement that moment, but I'd certainly be looking to see what's coming. It just wouldn't be life goes on, status quo, and I'm not checking. So, we have those drills coming up Thursday. Both our emergency management department and our health department do disaster drills all the time. They just finished some planning and some drills, scenarios up in Marshfield yesterday. We constantly try to look at what's the worst case scenario and then how do we make communications work to handle that.
Yeah, so be aware of it. And what you're supposed to be doing, what we're all supposed to be doing, is figuring out what we would do. And remember, a severe thunderstorm can cause a lot of damage. Remember the hailstorm? Remember the derecho? and that wiped out a lot of trees at Robinson Park, and lightning kills a lot of people.
Well, and be prepared.
And be prepared. And know what you would do as a family or as a business, where you would go, what would be your procedure. Okay, there's a tornado warning. They say it's headed for our area. Everybody head here.
We've done, I don't know that we've done a local study, but I've certainly seen the national studies out there that say the average family doesn't have enough supplies on hand to get by about 24 hours. So I guess the point would be, have some, potable water in the house. Make sure you have some kind of food, whether that be dried or rations or can. Make sure you have a can opener that's not just electric. Should we have a disaster in this area, think about this. You don't have power. Obviously, you don't have lights. You might not be able to get fuel. How are you going to survive for some period of time until we can get that back online? And most people never think about that because we frankly live in an area and in a society where all of those necessities are delivered 24/7. Yeah, and almost ever without interruption. And it's amazing. All you have to do is look at the news and look at the other countries and look at what they suffer through. And I'm complaining when cable TV is out for 15 minutes at my house. I'm calling them up frantic going, the game's starting. What's happening?
Right.
So I think we need to plan beyond cable TV and beyond the fact that my internet isn't working right this moment and really look at survivability and how we make some of those arrangements. So again, we don't stretch those resources as they try to get power back up and things back online.
If you go to the Wisconsin Emergency Management website, they have some tips on what you should have in an emergency kit for your family so you can survive a period with no power, etc.
You would think at least a couple of days.
Yeah, so be aware of that, and that's what's going to be happening. Well, we covered a lot of ground, and I guess now is the time. Hopefully we're going to see better weather and people can get out and enjoy beautiful Wood County.
That's my hope.
Okay. Well, Lance, I appreciate your time. You have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate you having me.
Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml, wrapping up part one of today's edition of the Morning Magazine. As always, it's brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and comfort air.